The smell at the bottom of a dry cistern is dust and cold stone, and the particular silence of a place that has forgotten it was ever. Meant to hold water, Joseph is 17 years old, and he is sitting at the bottom of one. Not pacing, not calling out anymore, just sitting with his back against the curved wall, feeling the cold of it come through the fabric of his tunic, listening to the sound drifting down from above. They are eating. His brothers, 12 meters above his head, give or take, they are sitting in the afternoon sun eating bread. He can hear the sounds, not words, just the sound of people who have decided something and settled into the ease of having decided it. The specific sound of a meal shared among people who have moved past the hard part. He knows that sound. He grew up eating with these men. He knows what comfortable sounds like from the inside. And hearing it from the bottom of a pit they put him in is a different education entirely. There is something in the dirt beside him. He almost does not notice it. A torn piece of cloth, the same color as the coat his father made him. The coat they stripped from his body before they threw him in. Because stripping it was the point, the coat was always the point. The coat was what they could not look at anymore. This piece must have torn free when they grabbed him. It is small, folded almost by the fall into a shape that fits inside a closed hand. He picks it up. He does not know yet what they will do with the coat. He does not know they will soak it in goat's blood and carry it back to his father as a story. He does not know that his father will tear his own clothes when he sees it and refuse to be comforted. He does not know any of what comes next. He only knows where he is right now and what he is holding, and the sound of the meal happening above him. He tucks the cloth somewhere close. He will carry it for the next 22 years. I want to stay in this pit for a moment, because I think most of us know what it is like to be put somewhere by someone who was supposed to love us. Maybe it was not a pit dug from the earth. Maybe it was a marriage that ended in a way you never saw coming. And the ending was not the worst part. The worst part was realizing later how long it had already been over before you knew. Maybe it was a parent whose words installed themselves so early in your thinking that you cannot always tell anymore which thoughts are yours and which ones are theirs. Maybe it was a friend, a mentor, a church leader, a person you trusted with a specific, unrepeatable thing about yourself that you do not show everyone. And what they did with that trust is something you have not been able to put into words without your voice changing. Maybe you are still at the bottom of it, not visibly, not in a way anyone at work would notice or anyone at church would guess, but somewhere inside you, part of you never climbed out. I know what that feels like, not as a general statement. Specifically, and I want to tell you something true about it before I tell you anything else. I am not someone who forgives easily. I want to say that without softening it, because I think too many conversations about forgiveness begin with the speaker positioned slightly above the listener, having arrived somewhere the listener has not yet reached. I have not fully arrived. This is not a testimony of completion. It is a report from the middle of the journey. And the middle is where I am, and the middle is where most of you are. And I think that is exactly the right place for this conversation to happen. There was a person in my life who hurt me. I am not going to describe what they did, because the specific shape of what they did is not the point. The point is what happened inside me afterward. And I think you will recognize it regardless of the details of my version. I said the words. I told God I had forgiven them. I prayed it specifically, by name, with intention. I meant it when I said it, or I believed I meant it, which is not quite the same thing, but felt like it at the time. And then 3 months later, something small happened. A song, a particular quality of afternoon light, the specific way a door closed in another room, and the pain was back, not softened by time, not processed into something manageable. Back, as alive and specific and sharp as the day it first arrived, and I thought, what is wrong with me? But here is the part I have never said out loud in a room of people. Here is the part that came after the question. After the pain came back, I went to it, not to process it, to rehearse it. I turned the memory over deliberately, the way you turn something over in your hands when you are looking for the part that proves what you already believe. I found the specific moment where they were most wrong, the particular sentence, the look on their face. I found the evidence, and for about 30 seconds, I want to be honest about this, for about 30 seconds, it helped. There was a specific, quiet satisfaction in finding it again, in confirming that yes, this happened, yes, it was that bad, yes, I was right to feel what I feel, and then the 30 seconds ended, and then the shame came in. Because I had said I forgave them. I had said the words. And here I was, returning to the wound on purpose, pressing it the way you press a bruise, not to check if it is healed, but because some part of you needs to confirm it is still there. And then, not long after the shame and I went back again, that cycle, pain returning, turning it over, finding the evidence, 30 seconds of something that felt like relief but was not. Shame. Going back anyway. That cycle is what not yet forgiveness actually looks like from the inside. And almost no one says it that clearly because almost no one wants to admit that the wound becomes, in some strange and uncomfortable way, a place we visit on purpose. I found something in Joseph's story that I had been reading past for years. A detail so small you could miss it entirely if you were moving at the pace most of us move through Scripture. And when I finally saw it, it reframed everything. Let me show it to you. Genesis chapter 37. Joseph is 17 years old. His brothers have hated him for long enough that the hatred has become structural. It is not a feeling they are having. It is a position they have settled into. The original Hebrew word used for what they felt when they saw him coming across the field that day, vayisneu, is not the word for jealousy. It is not even the word for anger. It is the word for a hatred that has become architectural, built into the walls of who they are, part of the load-bearing structure. He does not know that walking toward them. He is wearing the coat his father made him, the coat that was always the visible declaration that Jacob loved this one differently. This one is set apart. This one carries something the rest of you do not. And he is walking across a field toward men who have already, before he arrives, decided what they are going to do. Their minds are not being made up as he approaches. The decision is already finished. He is simply walking into the execution of it. There is a specific kind of pain in that image that I want you to sit with. The pain of walking toward someone in good faith, without suspicion, carrying the visible evidence of being loved, and discovering that the people you were walking toward had already rendered their verdict. Before you opened your mouth, before you did anything wrong, before you even arrived, maybe you know what that feels like. The conversation you entered without armor because you did not know armor was required. The relationship you invested in without reservation because you did not yet know that your investment was being received as a threat. The door you walked through with your whole self because no one told you the room on the other side had already decided what to do with you. You did not make someone hurt you by trusting them. That is the truth that most conversations about forgiveness avoid, because it is uncomfortable in the direction of the person who caused the pain rather than the person carrying it. Joseph walking across that field in that coat was not naivety. It was love. It was faithfulness. It was a son doing what his father asked. The failure was entirely theirs. You did not make someone hurt you by loving them. Now I want to take you somewhere else. A different room. A different kind of wound. Luke chapter 7. A dinner party at the home of a Pharisee named Simon. The guests are reclining at the table. This is formal. This is an occasion. This is a room where social position matters and everyone present knows exactly where they stand. And then the door opens. A woman walks in who was not invited. The text does not tell us her name. It tells us her reputation. Simon knows it. Everyone in the room knows it. And when she kneels at Jesus' feet and begins to weep and wipes her tears with her hair and breaks open an alabaster jar of expensive perfume and pours it over him, Simon watches all of this happen and thinks something he does not say aloud. He thinks, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. A verdict, rendered silently, privately, behind his eyes in the room that only he can access. He does not accuse her publicly. He simply decides, in the interior space where no one else can hear, that she is the sum of what she has done, and nothing beyond it. I want you to understand what this woman walked into. She came into a room where the most powerful person present had already finished thinking about her, where his conclusion was settled before she arrived, where nothing she could do, no amount of love poured out, no tears, no gift brought at tremendous personal cost, would change the shape of the judgment already formed behind his eyes. And she came anyway. She came with her jar and her grief and whatever she had been carrying before she arrived at that door. The weight of her own history, the weight of how this city had learned to see her, the weight of walking into rooms that had already finished thinking about her. She carried all of it across that threshold and placed it at the feet of the one person in the room who had not yet spoken. And then Jesus answered the thought that Simon never said out loud. That is the moment I need you to stay inside for a breath. Jesus answered a verdict rendered in private, in silence, in the room behind Simon's eyes that Simon believed no one could access. And the answer was not directed at Simon. The answer was directed at her. Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Not go, and they will finally understand you. Not go, and the verdict will be overturned. Go in peace. Carry what I have just given you, and let it be enough to walk into whatever room comes next. I have been holding something since the beginning of this about what she carried into that room, about the small piece of cloth Joseph tucked into his robe at the bottom of the pit. What was in that jar, what he kept all those years? It is almost time. Stay with me one moment longer. I need to speak now to some specific people. If you are someone who has been waiting for an apology, that is not coming. If you are carrying the weight of something someone did while they are living their life completely unaware of what they left behind, I see you, and I am not going to tell you to forgive quickly. I am not going to suggest that holding on means there is something defective in your faith. What was done to you was done. It was real. It cost you something real. And anyone who has not sat at the bottom of your particular pit does not get to tell you how long you are allowed to feel the cold of it. If you have mentally written the speech, you would give this person the exact words, the specific things you would finally say, the way their face would change when they realized what they had done. And you have rewritten that speech dozens of times because no version of it ever quite gives you what you are looking for. This is for you. What you are searching for in that imaginary conversation is something the conversation itself cannot give you. You already know this. You have written the speech enough times to know that even the perfect version of it does not end the way you need it to end. Because what you need is not a better speech. What you need is for what happened to you to have not happened. And there is no speech that delivers that. If you have said the words "I forgive" and meant them, and then felt the pain return and quietly concluded that you must have failed at forgiveness, hear this carefully. You did not fail at forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a single act that eliminates the memory. It is a direction you choose to keep walking in every time the memory pulls you back toward the evidence. The returning of the pain is not a report on your spiritual condition. It is a report on how much you loved and how real the wound was and how honest you are about both. And then there is one more person I want to speak to directly. The person who is not holding on from bitterness. The person who is holding on from principle. You are not angry anymore. Or not primarily angry. What you are is certain that releasing this person would be wrong, that the weight you are carrying is not spite but justice, that what was done to you deserves to be held, deserves to be counted, deserves to be acknowledged by someone, even if that someone is only you. Your instinct toward justice does not come from a broken place. It comes from God. Justice matters. What was done to you was wrong, and the wrongness of it does not disappear because you choose to release the person who did it. Those are not the same thing. The question is not whether justice should be served. The question is whether carrying the case yourself, in your own chest, rehearsing the evidence in private moments, building the argument inside a room that never reaches a verdict, whether that is actually the same thing as justice being served. Whether being the one who carries it is giving you what you are looking for. God has not forgotten what was done to you. He has not asked you to forget it either. Now, back to Joseph. He is 47 years old, second in command of Egypt, and his brothers walk into his throne room, not knowing who he is, bowing low because a famine has brought them to their knees and they need grain to survive. He knows exactly who they are, 3 times over the course of multiple visits. Before the final revelation, Joseph has to leave the room to weep. He goes to another room, closes the door, cries until he is finished, collects himself, and goes back. 3 times. He is not weeping because he is still destroyed by what they did. He is weeping because 22 years of something finally has a place to go. He is weeping the specific way you weep when a dam holds for a very long time, and then one day the pressure changes, and there is simply nothing left to hold it. And I cannot prove this from the text, but I believe it, the way you believe things you have carried for a long time and turned over many times and found to be true, that in one of those private rooms, Joseph reached into his robe. I believe he held the small piece of cloth he had carried since the day they stripped the coat from him and threw him into a dry cistern with the smell of dust and cold stone. The evidence, the proof, the thing he had kept not because he was planning to use it, but because some part of him had needed it there, had needed to know that what happened was real, that he had not invented the wound, that someone had counted it even if that someone was only him. And I believe that in one of those rooms, before the weeping that the whole palace heard, he put it down, not because they had earned it, not because the wound had stopped being real, not because the years of slavery and false accusation and imprisonment had somehow been worth it in a way that cancels what they cost. He put it down because carrying it was costing more than releasing it, because he had become, without fully realizing it, the keeper of a case that had already been decided, and keeping it was not justice being done. It was just weight he had been carrying so long he had forgotten what standing without it felt like. That is what she broke open on the floor of Simon's house. That is what was in the alabaster jar, not just her past. The proof, the accumulated evidence of every room that had rendered its verdict before she arrived, every verdict she had absorbed and stored and carried because some part of her needed to know it had been witnessed. All of it broken open, all of it poured out, at the feet of the one person in the room whose verdict had not yet been delivered, and whose verdict, when it came, was the only one that reached all the way down to where she actually lived. Go in peace. You have been carrying something. You know what it is. Father, you are the God who sat in that cistern with a 17-year-old boy and did not consider it beneath you to be present in a place that smelled like dust and cold stone and abandonment. You are the God who heard a verdict rendered in silence behind a Pharisee's eyes and answered it out loud in the direction of the one who needed to hear the answer. You know what is in the room before anyone speaks. You know what I have tucked somewhere close and carried without showing anyone. You know exactly what it is, and how long I have had it, and what it has cost me to keep it. I have to be honest with you. There is someone, maybe more than one person, whose name I have been holding in a place inside me that I have not wanted to release, because releasing them feels like telling the universe that what they did was acceptable. Because the thing I am carrying is not only pain, it is evidence. And if I put the evidence down, I am afraid that what happened will become officially unwitnessed, that no one will have counted it, that they will have gotten away with it in a way that feels like a second injustice layered on top of the first. I know you see it. I know you counted it. I know that you, unlike every room I have ever tried to bring this into, do not look away from the weight of it or rush me toward the resolution. You sit in the cistern. You are already in the room. Take the fear that makes me hold it, not the memory. I know that is not what you are asking for. But the part of me that rehearses the case in private, that goes back to the wound on purpose. That holds the cloth because putting it down feels like losing the last proof that it was ever real. Let me trust that it was real without needing to carry the evidence myself. Heal the specific room where I have kept this, the one I do not show people, the one I visit alone when I cannot sleep, and the darkness makes the memory feel like the present instead of the past. Meet me there. You already know where the door is, and for the person hearing this right now who is in the hardest version of this, who was hurt in a way I have not described and cannot fully imagine, by someone who has never once acknowledged what they left behind, hold them. Not with easy answers, just with your presence, which has always been the thing that changes what can be survived. Let them know that the size of the wound is not a measure of the distance from you. Let them know that you do not require them to be finished before you meet them here. Thank you for what you carried for me before I knew I needed carrying. For the times I was in the pit and you were already arranging what came next, and I could not see it and it happened anyway. I forgive, not because it is finished, because I am done being the one who carries it. You walked in with something tucked close. You do not have to walk out with all of it still there. Come back tomorrow. There is more to discover together, and I will be here. May you go from this place the way she went from that house, not because the room changed, but because something in you did. And may that be enough to walk into whatever comes next.